Welcome back. This is episode 3, or you could say part 3 of the mini series. I'm talking to Professor Ismail Bass, the head coach of the Qatar national team. My professor. I studied many years under Professor Ismail, 11 years to be exact. I don't think you realize that, but it was a long time.
Long time.
We studied together. I remember, just to give you guys a little quick history of how this happened. I started playing around with Jiu-Jitsu. I met his cousin, which is also my cousin, Professor Jamil, at a tournament here in the UAE, which is full circle, strangely enough. He brought some students. He was living, Professor Jamil was living in Saudi at the time. We were in Doha. We came here to fight in a tournament as white belts. He had some white belt students he brought, and I fought one of his students, and I lost. He came over, started speaking to me, said, "Hey, man, you did great. Where are you from?" Found out we were both from America, and the bond was made from there. And then we exchanged numbers. He went back to Saudi Arabia. I went back to Doha. We stayed in contact. And he used to come down. He used to drive down and fly down from Saudi Arabia and stay with us for the whole weekend. And we would just overdose on jiu-jitsu. And we would film everything and practice, and he would come back. And we did this for a few years of just him coming and giving us techniques and seminars. And this is kind of how this is the real history. Maybe we need to go back to the history of jiu-jitsu in Qatar.
There you go.
Because at the end of the day,
There you go.
I was there.
Yes.
Right? So
That's
maybe this
right.
need to be documented.
Documented, yes.
And I remember a time when we started jiu-jitsu, and I've already done a video about this, but to make things short, it basically started in my villa. Is where it started. Because I had a little dojo room in I don't even remember that room.
Yeah.
Remember that room?
Yeah, I remember.
When you first
it
came,
had a punching bag.
I had a punching bag. I had the mats in there. I had my
I
weapons in
remember.
there. I
Yeah,
used to
yeah.
go. I thought I was Bruce Lee. I used to be in
nice.
there training, right? And this is where we started. The guys used to come to my room in my villa, and we would watch a YouTube video on my laptop, and then we would try to implement the move. That's how we started.
Wow.
That's it. That was our jiu-jitsu in Qatar. We would watch a video. Wait, play it back. We watch a video. We try it, watch the
Nice.
video. And that's how we started jiu-jitsu until you came over and started to guide us. So, and then, of course, we went from place to place because we didn't have a dojo. We would train here and train there, and it just grew. That's going to be another podcast in itself. Anyway, back to jiu-jitsu growing in the Gulf. In general, as I said, I was there in the beginning. You were there in the beginning. Obviously, you're the head coach. Now, look, you came, and it was only a few of us.
Wow.
A few of us in Qatar. You know, if those who do jiu-jitsu, there's always jiu-jitsu politics, and we're not going to get into that because that's not what we're here for. But things change. Things have changed over time, but somehow you still ended up becoming the head coach of the national team. How's that position? How does it feel to be in that position? What does that feel like to be, in my opinion, to my knowledge, I think you're the only African-American to do this.
For sure.
I'm not sure. I don't think we realize how much history that has been made just from what we've been doing, brother. We left America. I left way back in 1996.
Oh, wow.
We're talking almost 30 years ago.
Yeah, that is over 30 years ago.
We're talking about almost 30 years now that I left and traveled the world to see jiu-jitsu evolve. What's your philosophy when it comes to guiding a student on their journey? How do you take a student from white belt and keep them on that journey to hopefully becoming a black belt? What's your philosophy on that?
Yeah. My philosophy is Well, we've documented it in our books, from Fast Track Secrets.
Yeah.
They don't want you to know.
Okay.
Who is they? You have to figure that out. But we documented that journey and how we take a student. So the first thing we do is figure out what body type the student has,
Okay.
what level of mobility,
Yeah.
what level of athleticism, and then from there you construct a plan. And usually, as one of our chapters says, you study the greats to become great. Study the greats to become great. So, for example, if a guy is a smaller guy and he's very flexible, but he doesn't have a lot of strength, we might look at a guy like Eddie Bravo.
Okay.
We might look at a guy like Horta Gracie. If a guy is a big guy and a strong guy, but he's not that flexible, but he is a monster, maybe Nicky Rod now.
Okay.
But if he's a big guy and he's flexible, you can look at Felipe Pena.
Okay.
You know, the guy has amazing guard. So what I do is I pair them up with someone that's similar to them.
Okay.
And then we basically start developing a tailor-made program
Okay.
that fits their game plan.
I got you.
I remember, last thing I'll say about that is John Machado came to our dojo in Michigan, and he was upset with the instructor. He says, why does every man in this gym roll like you? And I didn't understand what was going on.
Wow.
I didn't understand.
Wow.
He said, this guy here is 6'3" and 280 pounds. Well, the instructor at the time was 6'3", but about 170 pounds. Very flexible, 15 years of yoga. And so he had a different type of fluent, rubbery game.
Right.
Very smooth. But there would be another guy who's 5'2", 5'4", very short legs.
Yeah.
Broad, trying to play the same game. It won't work.
No, short
he
legs.
He can't work the close guard like this guy could. This guy was working rubber guard and all type of stuff. So at that point, I caught on to what was said. And I said, you got to train. And he gave me an explanation, me and my coach Tyrone at the time. He gave us an explanation, and Jamil as well. And he gave us an explanation of...
and this is Master John
Master John Machado.
John Machado.
John Machado. And he basically was breaking down like how different people have to have different games. Mm-hmm. When I met Hegan and we did a private, I was a purple belt. He said, look, my friend, the first thing he said to me, he said, look, my friend, you're a big guy. I'm going to train you to be a gorilla, roll like a gorilla, not a rabbit. So I said, okay.
Okay.
That was the first thing he said to me. So same philosophy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a good one, man. Let's move on to belt promotions, man.
Okay.
Belt promotions, man. What do you look at? Because that's always, subjective, right? So, in general, and number one, what do you think about following a set curriculum? I have my opinion about that. And what do you think about belt promotions in general and how it's done in jiu-jitsu, or how do you promote, and what do you look for when you start promoting your students in jiu-jitsu? Say, for example, a guy got a white belt, he's been there and taking him along, and now he's looking for his blue belt or his purple belt or whatever. What do you look for when you promote people? I already know what you're going to say first is consistency. Like, you got to show up.
Right, that's for sure.
You got to be
that's anything,
Yeah, I mean, you got to be there.
So great question. Usually in most gyms, the promotion comes when the student is not looking. Now, the funny thing about that, I was just watching something.
When the student is not
looking for the promotion.
Not looking for it.
Yeah.
Okay, he's not asking, or he's
not just every day like, am I close to purple? Am I close to B? Am I close?
Okay.
See, that's in the jiu-jitsu history. It's always been like a surprise.
Okay. Yeah.
To get promoted. Now, one way, as Master Hegan was saying when he came to Doha, he said, and I asked him this question.
Okay.
He said, if a student wins a major tournament, major tournament being Abu Dhabi World Pro,
Yeah.
Europeans,
Yeah.
IBJJF,
Right.
or the actual
Pan Am's or something
Pan
like
Am's
that.
or something,
Worlds, yeah.
and they win their division or even place, like silver or something, they should go to the next belt. Because if you win the Worlds or you win Europeans, right, unless you're going to fight in another tournament a month later,
Right.
why would you come back the next year in the same belt?
Okay.
It makes no sense.
And this is from Master Higan
That was
himself.
from Master Regan Machado.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And that makes sense. So that's how I judge it. And in that fast track system or books that we wrote, we talked about that. That is the fastest way, one of the fastest way to be promoted is tournaments. And you're also going to grow. Whether you win or lose, the preparation that you do for a competition makes you hone in and focus on details that you normally wouldn't just casually training. So you're going to grow and be better anyway.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Okay.
that's how we judge it.
So tournaments. That's going to get you there faster.
Yes.
So now that brings me a question. So take, for example, the situation that I have. We are out in the Cape Verde Islands. We're isolated, and there are many other people like this in small towns where they just don't have the access to big tournaments. They don't have the means, maybe even the financial means to get there, to get to these tournaments. These tournaments are expensive now, bro.
Yeah, it's
right?
true. That's true. It's true.
So
It's true.
what advice would you give, say me as a coach, coaching my students that don't have access to tournaments like that, even though I do encourage them if they ever travel. So guys, if you ever travel, jump in, try to get into a tournament,
Right.
or even just try to visit another school to
Right.
get a different flavor, right? But what would you suggest if people like just don't have the access? Because not everybody. I mean, we are living in luxury, brother. As today until December,
Yeah.
I just checked the schedule. There's like 22 tournaments.
Wow.
Between now and December. 22 tournaments. That's a lot. So some people don't have that access. So how would they continue to?
Okay.
What do you think about that?
Yeah. So in a case like that, you have to judge the students based off how they roll with you. And what I mean by that is it's not that they need to tap you, because a
Right.
blue belt, purple belt, they will not. They don't need to go crazy to tap their instructor. That's not what we're saying.
Okay.
They asked Hickson Gracie a while back, a long time ago actually, how do you maintain your level when you're so much better than everybody? And Hickson said, I take away things from my game in order to develop points that might not be as stronger. So when I roll with a blue belt, I roll with him on a blue belt level,
Okay.
as long as he's rolling in a respectful and a good way,
Right.
and not trying to like
So
just
he takes away the black belt and he comes down to the blue belt level.
right. For example, I might pull guard when I don't normally have to pull guard because my takedowns are. So I'll give him something,
Right.
or I'll let him pass.
Right.
When I let him pass, I want to see how he attacks me. Is he just trying to go crazy and like pin down a key lock or Americana
Right.
and just brute strength? If I see that, I'm going to counter it, and then at that point, I'm going to go back to a higher belt level,
Okay.
and then I'm going to
And see if he can
Teach.
come up to that level.
yeah, I'm gonna. So that's what I do. I want to see how when I roll with my students, I want to see what they're doing. I'm admiring the work. Okay, did he do the knee slicer correctly? How is he coming around? Is he using athleticism? Is he just jumping? What is he doing? Okay, is he on side control? Does he have set me up with a key lock, knee on stomach, arm bar, leg lock? What is he doing?
Right.
What is his
or is he just moving?
right? What's his pathology of
right.
attacks?
Right.
And then if they're just coming forward, that's okay. This guy has, and then after that, I will explain to them like, listen, you got to do this, and this, that. One thing, lastly, I'll say about that, there was a sign on the wall at one school I went to, and it said it was a letter from Master Helio Gracie. He said he believed that smaller guys were progressing in jiu-jitsu faster than bigger guys. Why? Because smaller guys don't have athleticism and strength, so they only have the techniques.
Okay.
So I said, you know what? That clicked like,
Yeah.
So then I said, okay, from now on, I'm not using any. This is a blue belt. I was a white belt then. I didn't use any of the wrestling I had, any of the other things that I had, only technique to get out of a position because the strength is always going to be there.
Yeah.
So when you get your technique all the way up, technical, and then you put the strength in, then you're on a whole nother level.
Right.
So I try to have my students do that.
So in our case, what I do is also, like you said, I do that. By the way, I check to see how they roll with me, and also if we have visitors come in.
Yes.
I like to, especially if we have like a brown belt or a black belt. I like my students to roll with them and then get feedback from the black belt. So
Yes.
what do you think about him? How did you? How did he feel? Also get some feedback from other because sometimes you can be biased, right?
Right.
Especially if you like the guy, he's a really nice guy. Other guys say, no, man, he needs more work. He needs more work here and there. And then something that I didn't see, right?
Right.
So I use that as a gauge, or if another blue belt comes and they roll with my blue belts and I see how they roll, especially then you find out, okay, this visitor, he's done tournaments before. He's won some medals before. My guy is he's on the island. He's, he's never left the island.
Right.
Maybe. But he's handling this guy. For me, that's a big win. That's progress in my opinion. So
this is right.
and then of course, it's not just me. They watch videos. They watch, they purchase videos and they watch stuff and they go outside of practice and train themselves and let locks and stuff like that. I was just wondering your opinion about how to get to that next level when you don't have some of the luxuries that we have, right?
True. That's the ways I would say. One thing too, Akil, and I'm using this as a chance to teach because we haven't seen each other in such a long time,
right.
And that is a lot of black belts don't have what you have. What do I mean by that? A lot of them are not intellectual. A lot of them are not educated as me and you are. And so they have a different pathology. What they did, a lot of black belts, that's why there's so many, what should I say, not normal, but average black belts. They learned jiu-jitsu as a dance or a system, as a string of things.
Okay.
And they can't think outside of that box. So it's
like loss of creativity.
The best example I can use, and I've had this conversation, ironically enough, with Sheikh Fahad Al-Thani about this, and that is the Cuban boxing system.
Yeah.
The Cuban boxing system at one time for the Olympics was amazing.
Right.
Okay? They still have great boxers.
Yeah.
But they have a system. And they think, even when they lose, oh, I didn't work the system as good as. They don't look at the system needing innovation in it.
Evolution.
Evolution.
Okay.
That's why you have now.
Oh, okay. I got you.
The top no-gi guy is a European, Wozniak. He won all the top 4 competitions now.
He's been burning it up.
Right. Now, and in no-gi, you got Gordon Ryan.
Yeah.
You got Nicky Rod, who just beat the top guys.
Yeah.
And, so this is innovation at work. And if people don't innovate and change with that, it's going to be more and more non-Brazilians per se, because Brazil is the origin of this ground fighting art. It evolved more in Brazil over the last 100 years or so. And so we have to evolve. But the system was so good at one time that people just rely on that system and they don't come out of it. And I see it. I see it.
Yeah. Wow.